Countries of ex-Yugoslavia managed to explore many subgenres of horror. Even though Yugoslavia was a socialist state, a lot of effort and money went into entertainment. As you will see in this list, Yugoslavia produced more movies and of better quality than countries that made up the federation produce today. Most of these movies are still respected and watched today, not just by those who were alive during their release, but they also attract new audiences. It was not in vain, or Nije bilo uzalud from 1957, directed by Nikola Tanhofer. Soon after coming to a small village, young doctor must fight against strong local superstitions. Gifts from My Cousin Maria, or Darovi moje rođake Marije, a TV movie released in 1969, written and directed by Đorđe Kadijević, based on the novel by Momčilo Nastasijević. The story follows the fate of a deceased woman, Maria, who was once a very beautiful girl, but her beauty became deadly to her and the people around her. Death Ship, or Mrtva lađa from 1971, directed by Rajko Ranfl. The movie is about a holiday romance between Daniel and Mariana, disturbed by a premonition of an imminent fatal event. In this vision, the beloved accompanies her lover on a hard and worrisome voyage by sea, and when the situation seems most desperate, a mysterious ship suddenly appears on the horizon. The She Butterfly, or Leptirica, was made for television in 1973, probably one of the most known ex-U horror films, which terrified children as well as adults. The movie was directed by Đorđe Kadijević and is an adaptation of a story translated as After 20 Years, written in 1880 by Milovan Glišić. Now considered a cult classic, this movie is widely considered as the first Yugoslavian horror movie. This movie tells the story of a young man who wants to marry the beautiful daughter of a landowner who refuses to allow the marriage. To prove his worth, the young man becomes a miller in a vampire-infested local mill. Teachers would tell children to watch the film, thinking it is an adaptation of a book. Instead of broadening their knowledge of Serbian literature, children would be traumatized and taken to a psychiatrist. After watching the movie, parents had to take their children to the main actress's house so she would show them she doesn't have vampire teeth. During a screening in North Macedonia, a man from the audience died from cardiac arrest he suffered during the metamorphosis scene. The word of the scariest film ever made soon spread across Yugoslavia. Protege, or Štićenik, is a 1973 made-for-television movie directed by Đorđe Kadijević, a name you will hear multiple times during this video. The movie tells the story of a terrified young man who is running away from a mysterious man in a black coat and a bowler hat. He finds the asylum in the nearby mental hospital, where the doctor takes care of him. However, he can't escape from his fate. In 1973, there was another movie made for television called San Doktora Mišića, or Dr. Mišić's Dream, directed by Branko Pleša. This movie is based on the novel House of Ghosts. The story is about Dr. Mišić, who comes to the Abuchevsky castle, a place known as haunted by ghosts and wraiths. He is a stubborn supporter of common sense and logic, taking all assumptions about transcendent world and fourth dimension to be silly. The third TV movie made in 1973 was Devičanska svirka, or Bachelorette Party, directed by Đorđe Kadijević. The story is based on a novel about a young man, Ivan, who travels in a carriage and stops to rest in a remote castle somewhere in the lowlands. The castle is considered by locals to be haunted. The coachman doesn't want to carry on, so Ivan continues his journey by foot. A young man who passes by tells Ivan about the castle, but the next minute the carriage kills him. Sibila, a beautiful but strange woman, comes out of the carriage and helps Ivan carry the dead child into the castle, which turns out to be her home. Ivan starts to hear strange music inside the castle. He soon falls in love with Sibila. She is played by Olivera Katarina, one of the most known ex-U cinema divas from the 60s and 70s. Ward 6, or Paviljon broj 6, a TV movie from 1973, directed by Lucian Pintili. It is an adaptation of a short story of the same name by Anton Chekhov. The movie is a study of the mental breakdown of a doctor in a remote rural village. He believes himself intellectually superior to everyone except for a political prisoner in a mental ward. This is a metaphor on life under repressive governments, conformity versus individual expression. Nocturno, a TV movie from 1974, directed by Branko Ivanda, based on the story of the same name by Sandor Ksaverđalski. After the death of his beloved wife, a nobleman from northern Croatia turns to spiritualism, refusing to accept that she is gone. She begins to appear in his presence, and he starts to believe that she is alive. Almost a decade after the TV premiere, the movie was released in theaters under the title The Night After Death. Oath, or Zakletva, from 1974, directed and written by Đorđe Kadijević. One morning, running through narrow streets before the army, Vuko accidentally witnesses the fight between the knights and the guards of Kotor. He falls into the hands of guards and finds himself imprisoned. He takes an oath on the eve of his execution that will deceive his miserable destiny even further. The Damned Thing or Prokletnja, a TV movie from 1975 directed by Branko Pleša, who also wrote the adaptation of the book by the same name. The story takes an artsy approach which stresses the metaphysical dread of a man encountering an invisible entity which slaughters people in the marshes. In 2006, the story was used in the American TV series Masters of Horror. Backbone or Kičma from 1975, directed by Vlatko Gilić. It stars prominent ex-U actors like Dragan Nikolić, Predrag Laković and Mira Banjac. The story is about a microbiologist who is trying to figure out the source of a bad odor that is spreading across New Belgrade blocks, thinking it may be in a direct relation with a rampant suicide rate. The Rat Savior or Izbavitelj from 1976. The movie is directed by Krsto Papić, who also co-wrote the adaptation of a book of the same name by the Soviet writer Alexander Green. The story is about a poor writer who discovers that a species of rats has banded together to impersonate humans and replace them unnoticed. Love and Rage or Ljubav i bijes from 1978, directed by Bakir Tanović, who also wrote the script based on a book. This is a historical drama set in the beginning of the 19th century. The richest merchant in Sarajevo marries the baker's daughter, but after returning from one of his business trips, he discovers that she is possessed by the Fury. He goes to see an Orthodox and a Catholic priest, but they both fail to drive the devil out. He then goes to see Imam, who sets up an exorcism session. The Man to Kill or Čovjek koga treba ubiti from 1979, directed by Veljko Bulajić. After the murder of the Russian Emperor Peter III, who was succeeded by Empress Catherine, Satan decides that the balance between good and evil on Earth has been destabilized. In order to set things right, he sends his representative to Earth, the teacher Farfa, who bears an unusual resemblance to Peter III. His mission is to seize power from the old Duke of Montenegro and then to take back the Russian throne as Peter III. The people of Montenegro accept Farfa as their new leader, and he proclaims himself as the new emperor Stjepan Mali, successfully resisting an invasion by the Turks. Farfa is touched by the Montenegrine's kindness and courage, falls in love with the beautiful Alpha, and fails to follow Satan's plan. Not one to be crossed, Satan sets out to kill him. Visitors from the Arcana Galaxy or Gost iz Galaksije from 1981. A science fiction writer is gifted with the ability to materialize his thoughts and accidentally brings a group of aliens to Earth. The director is Dušan Vukotić. Rhythm of a Crime or Ritam zločina from 1981, directed by Zoran Tadić. After moving to a new neighborhood, a mysterious man starts introducing his landlord to his hobby of collecting crime statistics. Variola Vera from 1982. The movie is directed by Goran Marković, who also wrote it together with Milan Nikolić. This is a true story of the famous variola epidemic outbreak in Belgrade. One of the stars of this movie is Rade Šerbedžija, who went on to have an international career in different genres. Strangler vs. Strangler or Davitelj protiv Davitelja from 1984. The movie is directed by Slobodan Sijan and revolves around a mentally disturbed flower seller who starts killing young girls on the streets of Belgrade. While the frustrated police inspector is trying to stop him, an aspiring musician finds his life and work deeply intertwined with that of a killer. Lazar from 1984. The movie is directed by Aleksandar Fotez. It tells the story of a mother and her son who live in the country. She has gone mad and the son has fallen mute as a result of the violence to which they had been exposed during the war. Reflections or Već viđeno from 1987. Written and directed by Goran Marković. The story is about a piano teacher who is deeply traumatized by the events of his childhood as well as by political oppression in his youth. Decades later, all those traumas lead to carnage. Bloodsuckers or Krvopici from 1989, written and directed by Dejan Sorak. The streets of Zagreb are empty because of a rumored vampire who attacks lonely women. One day, psychiatrist Franjo receives a strange visitor who is convinced that he is a vampire from the 16th century. He tells Franjo that the members of his family were famous vampire hunters. Naturally, Franjo doesn't take him seriously, but his wife Barbara likes the stranger a lot and believes his story. The Meeting Point or Sabirni Centar from 1989, directed by Goran Marković, who also adapted the screenplay based on his novel of the same name. The story takes place during the excavation of ancient Roman ruins when an old archaeology professor accidentally opens the gate between our world and the world of the dead. A Holy Place or Sveto Mesto from 1990. The movie is directed by Đorđe Kadijević, who also wrote the adaptation of Nikolai Gogol's 1835 short story V. However, Kadijević uses it only as a starting point for his own explorations into the dark side of eroticism. Gogol's story deals with Toma, a reluctant theology student who is forced to read the Psalms over an undead girl for 3 nights in a row. Kadievich departs from the original story and introduces an excess of perversity and horror more reminiscent of the Anglo-American Gothic than the milder Slavic attempts in a similar mode. Incest is the name of the game here. More, a TV movie from 1991 directed by Snježana Tribuson. The story is about Sue, the only daughter of a landowner, who comes back from a fashionable European resort where she spent a vacation. Arno, an impoverished nobleman, wins her heart and they soon get engaged. Living on the farm is the manager's son named Moore, whom Sue spent her childhood with. The reunion flares up old emotions, but soon strange things begin to happen. The stories about a werewolf start to circle around. Full Moon over Belgrade, or Pun mesec nad Beogradom, from 1993. The movie is directed by Dragan Kresoja. In 1992 Belgrade, Alexa works the night shift at an occult magazine to avoid military police, draft and war. Old colleague Miss Kosara offers him shelter at her place. In his dream, a dead friend warns him about the old lady. Morana from 1994, directed by Ales Verbic. The movie is about a group of 9 friends who go to the mountains of Triglav in seek of Morana, goddess of death. They end up being killed one by one. Executioner's Fresco, or Rabljeva Freska, from 1995, directed by Anton Tomasic. In a small seaside town, a group of people discover their dark past and repeat their bad habits, even those from the time of Inquisition and persecution of witches. They are ought to repeat these actions as long as they start to experience love and forgiveness in some of the following stages of reincarnation. House of Ghosts, or Kuća Duhova, from 1998, a TV movie directed by Bogdan Žižić based on the novel Dr. Mišić's Dream. A doctor opens a clinic in his parents' abandoned house, which is supposedly haunted by ghosts, as claimed by its only tenants, an old servant and 2 maids. He starts having nightmares of a pretty young girl. TT Syndrome, from 2002. The movie is written and directed by Dejan Zečević. It is about a group of people who get locked in a Turkish bath at night, hunted by a brutal serial killer who seems to be seized with the TT syndrome, a brain malady that leads to painful sociopathy. Sunken Graveyard, or Potonulo groblje, from 2002, directed and written by Mladen Juran, based on the novel of the same name by Goran Tribuson. Ivan, in his early 40s, returns after many years of absence to his native town, a typical Middle European small town in the north of Croatia, in search of his identity. The town is threatened by the river, which has already sunk a good part of the cemetery. Along this threat, an unexpected plot develops, in the genre of a film noir, a certain fantasy of soul. Guardian of the Frontier, or Varuh Meje, from 2002, directed by Maja Weiss, for which she received an award for Best Direction at the 2002 Festival of Slovenian Film. The story begins with a canoe trip down the river Kolpa that becomes a journey of discovery for 3 female students. Hunger, or Glad, from 2002. The movie is written and directed by Mladen Đorđević. The story is about a young writer of horror stories who is hopelessly trying to find a publisher for his first novel. Completely disillusioned, he decides to quit writing. While working as a waiter in a restaurant, he witnesses strange events and feels compelled to begin an investigation. Labyrinth, or Labyrinth, from 2002. The movie is directed by Miroslav Lekic and is about an aging gambler and womanizer who returns home after 20 years. During a spiritual seance, he is contacted by his friend who committed suicide years ago. The film was Yugoslavian candidate for Best Foreign Movie for 2002. Infection, or Infekcija, from 2003, directed by Krsto Papić. In a fictional Central European country, democracy and freedom are only illusions, because behind polished surface there's many cases of murders and manipulations with people. Police and city authorities are helpless when it comes to revealing the evil and culprits behind it. In the center of this story is the writer Ivan Gajski, whose friend died under sketchy circumstances. Gajski reveals that those who most advocate democracy are not only the same involved in those crimes, but they also did some of the murders as part of a TV production. Gajski meets all kinds of characters through his quest and discovers the dark past of the European continent. Flirt, or Flirt, from 2005, directed by Nikola Mišić, Mladen Šević, Radosav Vojnović and Vladimir Popović. The movie begins when 2 girls put a curse on their ex-boyfriends and send 2 demons, Strahinja and Lola, to take their lives. The 4 stories that make up this omnibus film follow the main characters whom Lola and Strahinja are supposed to pick up. Each of them tries to avoid death. PIST, or Prokletstvo ikone Svetog Teodora, from 2005, written and directed by Nebojša Nenadić. Also a comedy and mystery, this movie tells the story of the theft of a miraculous iconostasis from the city museum. Shaitan's Warrior or Shaitanov from 2006. The movie is the directorial debut of Stefan Filipovic, who also wrote the screenplay. When an ancient book is recovered by high school nerd Stanislav, all hell breaks loose, with his classmates trying to stop the evil that has risen from the book. A Tailor's Secret or Krojačeva Tajna from 2006, written and directed by Miloš Avramović. The story revolves around a shy dressmaker and a mysterious woman who draws him into a dangerous game. Alive and Dead or Živi Mrtvi from 2007, directed by Kristijan Milić. The movie is set in 1943 when a group of Croatian soldiers overtake a strategically important point in western Bosnia with a goal to destroy a group of communist partisans. On the way, they meet some supernatural phenomena. The Gorjanci Vampire or Vampirs Gorjancev from 2008, written and directed by Vinci Vogue Anslovar. It tells an old legend of a vampire from Gorjanci forest, a dwelling place for creatures from folk legends and myths. Transition or Prehod from 2008, directed by Boris Palčić. A painter named Vlado paints a portrait of an unknown woman who becomes alive, and the woman in the painting shows up at the artist's exhibition opening. As Vlado becomes involved in a passionate affair with the mysterious woman, he does not even notice that he has fallen into the trap of ZOM, a parapsychological organization which controls the actions of individuals by entering their thoughts. Vlado realizes that he cannot trust anyone and even doubts his own sanity. However, it turns out that the naive artist is not such an easy target. Zone of the Dead or Zona Mrtvih from 2009. The movie is directed by Milan Konjević and Milan Todorović. The movie is about Interpol agents who must join forces with a dangerous prisoner to fight zombie hordes. Massacre or Massacre from 2009, written and directed by Bostian Zorko. A group of friends are going on a picnic in the woods by the lake, unaware of what is waiting for them there. A great picnic day turns into a nightmare. Life and Death of a Porno Gang or Život i smrt porno bande from 2009. The movie was written and directed by Mladen Đorđević. It tells the story of an aspiring filmmaker who turns to porn after little success, then falls into a pursuit of crime with his band of misfits and suffers the repercussions of their unprecedented journey. A Serbian film or Srpski film from 2010. Directed by Srđan Spasojević, the film contains extreme and brutal scenes of violence and is not recommended for people under the age of 18, but also for people over 18 who are sensitive to such content. Upon its release, the Serbian authorities requested an expert opinion on whether the film contains elements of a criminal offense in order to initiate proceedings for its ban. The film was not shown in London at Fright Fest because the organizers of this event refused to show the significantly shortened version approved by the British Board of Film Classification. The film was also banned by a court decision at the International Film Festival in San Sebastian, Spain, on the grounds that it threatens sexual freedom. The movie is about an aging porn star who agrees to participate in an art film in order to make a clean break from the business, only to discover that he has been drafted into making a pedophilia and necrophilia-themed snuff film. The Place Where the Last Man Died, or Mjesto na kojem je umro posljednji čovjek from 2010, written and directed by Ivan Perić. The story is about Kane, a military scientist bitterly disappointed in human race. He believes the mankind failed to create a world worth living in. Only a small minority of privileged people live in prosperity, while the rest are spending their lives in pain and hopeless struggle to survive. He decides to wipe out the entire human race from planet Earth by activating the weapons of mass destruction. After some time has passed, he comes out of his shelter only to discover a mysterious signal indicating someone has survived. He goes in a search to eliminate the survivor and complete what he started. Vector from 2010, directed by Ivan Rogar. The story takes place in a raging nuclear war between the East and the West when a group of 3 people head on a journey into the Forbidden Zone. Nasty Nancy from 2010, written and directed by Sandy Mance. This movie is about a school full of perverse teachers where you earn grades by having sex. Nancy is the only honest person there, but despite studying a lot, she fails her final exam. It's time for revenge. Vinepires The Ice Harvest or Vinopiri Ledena Trgatev from 2010, written and directed by Vitomir Kaučić. Detectives Nina and Milan investigate the murder of a teenage girl. In the course of the investigation, corpses keep piling up. They all have in common the fact that all victims were drunk and are missing blood. The Enemy or Neprijatelj from 2011. The movie is directed by Dejan Zečević and revolves around Serbian soldiers who discover a man locked in a basement at the end of the war. After he is freed, people start disappearing. The Ascent or Poslednje poglavlje from 2011, directed by Nemanja Bečanović. Jovan has just graduated from literature and struggles to finish his first novel. He decides to go to his friend's country estate in order to dedicate himself to writing in peace. At the estate, which is situated in obscured mountains landscape, live farmers, one very strange family with no contact with civilization. They are illiterate, they live in unclearly defined sexual relations, and they are devoted to nature. Zeko, head of the family, is the saddest authority, whose word, will and unique worldview can't be challenged by family members. Jovan slowly gets used to the life with them and decides to stay with them a little longer, but it is not up to him to decide how much longer. Vampires Blood Tool or Vinopiri Krvni Davek from 2012, written and directed by Vitomir Kaučić. It is about a girl's confrontation with the corrupt winemakers elite which controls the whole town in conspiracy with mysterious vampires. Delicacy from Zagorje or Zagorski Specialitet, a TV movie from 2012, directed by David Kapac. 5 yuppies go on a paintball session up in the hilly area of Zagorje, where they soon lose contact with one another, but are discovered by a family of native villagers who make a homemade delicacy. They soon find out what are the ingredients of their host's recipe. Massacre 2 Valley of No Return or Massacre 2 Graba brez povratka from 2013, directed by Bostian Zorko. The story takes place in Slovenske Gorice in the Slovenian countryside, where the locals live peaceful and normal lives until the arrival of the hooded chainsaw killer. Naprata from 2013, written and directed by Mladen Milosavljević. Inspired by an infamous online video clip of a son beating his mother, a television crew from Belgrade comes to a remote Serbian village to shoot a report on violence against women. Inquiring with the locals about the protagonists of the video, they encounter a local expert on supernatural phenomena and learn about a ritual of summoning an ancient demon, Naprata. Wanting to capture the first authentic footage of something unearthly, they change their plans. Excited by the prospective success of the recording, they defy the old saying that it is better to believe than to be convinced. Fallen Angel or Pali Anđeo from 2013, directed by Marko Marinković. A group of young artists remain locked in the building all night. There in the dark they scream, and after their last voices turn to silence, they see a fallen angel. He's the one who invented the game, dictated the rules, and determined who will survive. Endless Corridor or Beskonačni hodnik from 2013, written and directed by Bojan Stefanović and also co-written by Boris Tokarev. When a group of young people explore an abandoned mansion, they awaken the restless spirits that haunt the dark halls. Unable to hide from the vengeful ghosts of Serbia's dark past, they try to find a way out before it is too late. Killer Mermaid or Mamula from 2014, directed by Milan Todorović, the film is about 2 young American women who go on a Mediterranean vacation and uncover the watery lair of a killer mermaid hidden beneath an abandoned military fortress. What was planned as a carefree adventure becomes a deadly fight for survival. Idol or Idylla from 2015, written and directed by Tomasz Gorkic. The movie is about an amateur photo model Zina who heads for a fashion shoot in the nature, accompanied by the ambitious Mia, a pathetic Dragica, and snobby photographer Blitz. On the idyllic location, a supposedly ordinary fashion shoot soon turns into a fierce fight for survival. This movie is classified by many as the first pure horror film from Slovenia and, judging by some, also its most radical one. Open Wound or Otvorena from 2016, written and directed by Momir Milošević. Sara and Alisa's friendship comes to an end after Sara opens up about her sexual urges. As Alisa grows ever more distant, Sara descends deeper into loneliness, eventually leading her into a horrifying emotional state. She is Alive or Ona je živa from 2016, written and directed by Strahinja Mlađenović. At the one side of the inner yard lives a mother who is left alone by her husband with a little boy and his sister. On the other side lives a wife with her husband, a geologist in pension, who has suffered a heavy stroke and now lives at the edge between life and death. These 2 women are trying to find ways to deal with their loneliness. The mother is desperately trying to find a man, and she becomes addicted to Latin American soap operas. On the other hand, the wife is trying to die with her husband, and she is trying to kill every bit of sensuality left in her. The Rift Dark Side of the Moon from 2016, directed by Dejan Zečević. When an American military satellite crash lands in eastern Serbia, a team of US and Serbian agents are dispatched to secure the remains of the satellite, but when they locate the crash site, all is not as it seems. Exorcism or Exorcism from 2017, written and directed by Dalibor Matanić. Based on a true story, this film is about a possession of a young girl and gathering of a priest, a religious fanatic, a shrink, a journalist of a conservative TV station and her cameraman around an exorcism. They are not aware that all of them who entered the creepy basement that night are Satan's targets. Barbara Blue from 2018, written and directed by Vid Stech. In November 2015, a box of old VH tapes and DVDs was found. The footage was edited together as a surreal horror trip that opens the gate to the new level of nightmare. The Curse of Valburga or Prokletstvo Valburge from 2019, written and directed by Tomasz Gorkic. The story takes place when Bojan and Marian organize a tourist scam at a mansion in Valburga meant to have belonged to Count Dracula's cousin. During the first visit, a mysterious character appears. The Last Serb in Croatia or Poslednji Srbin u Hrvatskoj from 2019, written and directed by Predrag Licina. The movie is set in Croatia 7 years after bankruptcy. There is a fight going on in the world. Water has become more precious than oil. In order to get hold of it, the powerful are ready to start wars, conquer, destroy, and even plant a zombie virus. Listen Little Man or Čuj mali čoveče from 2019, written and directed by Marko Žunić. The story is about a man trapped in a kind of a parallel and weird universe. He is forced to accept the real world in order to become normal himself. Manhattan Odyssey or Manhattanska Odiseja from 2020, written and directed by Mario Vrbančić. The story is about a once famous but now retired 70-year-old actor who is looking for a dog walker for his adorable black schnauzer Mitzi that he loves more than anything else in the world. Out of all the candidates, he picks Daniel, a young loser immersed in virtual games. Jacob teaches him the ancient art of dog walking. This unusual story leads us from an everyday activity such as dog walking to the liminal space of the human-animal becoming either animal or human. Vampire or Vampir from 2021, written and directed by Branko Tomovic. The movie is about a man from London who comes to a small remote village in Serbia to look after the cemetery. He starts to have nightmare visions and suspects the friendly villagers have more sinister intentions with him. The Pond from 2021, directed by Petar Pasic. The movie is about an anthropology professor who was kicked out from his university for claiming to be on the threshold of an apocalyptic discovery. Someone or something is still interested in his work. Cycle or Cyklus from 2022, directed by Marko Jovicic and Jelena Stojkovic. The movie is about a curse of a family dating back to the 18th century that came to be after a betrayal and murder of a family by their friends. However, the murderers forgot a pregnant woman and 2 girls hiding in the attic. Soon they start appearing in the village like ghosts, and the murderers start dying one by one in what seems like a series of weird accidents. Berzaglia from 2022, written and directed by Alen Poparic. The story begins when an investigative journalist gets entangled in a murder case where the victim was seemingly tormented and possessed by an ancient evil. Unbound Evil or Oslobođeno zlo from 2022, a Croatian-American horror mystery film directed by Vjekoslav Katushin. While witnessing a horrific paranormal occurrence inside an abandoned church, a military commando led by a ruthless colonel discovers a digital tablet with video footage on it. Co-workers filming their trip in the woods, connecting the hikers in the footage with the unbound evil inside the church. Videotek or Videoteka from 2023, directed and written by Luka Bursac. The story is about a small-time thief who, running from the police, finds a refuge in an abandoned video store. Forced to spend the night there, he decides to watch 3 horror films. Mud Brick from 2023, written and directed by Nikola Petrovic. After inheriting an old mud brick house in his home village in Eastern Europe, a man returns after spending his whole life in England, only to find out that inhabitants are hiding a dark secret about the pagan Slavic cult and his own past. Undead vs. Mankind, Battle for Resources, written and directed by Ivan Žiža. The zombie virus has infected the whole world. The survivors are hiding in remote places, but there is not enough water and food for all. Their only salvation is to go to the last civilized shelter called the Safe Zone, but first they have to break through the horde of the undead. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe so you don't miss future videos.